In a universe wired for voices, why has no one spoken back? There are more stars in the cosmos than seconds in the history of humanity. Trillions of suns blaze in the dark, each one a potential cradle for life. And yet, across this infinite stage of possibility, we hear nothing, no greetings, no warnings, not even a whisper, just silence. A silence so vast, so ancient, it feels less like absence and more like a decision. We are adrift in a cathedral of stars, shouting into the dark, and nothing answers back. And so the question remains, more urgent than ever, are we the first intelligence to awaken in this cosmic ocean, or are we the last after the others fell silent? Please like and subscribe, because this journey will change how you see our place in the universe. Prepare yourselves. We begin. The oldest question ever asked. Long before we launched telescopes or cracked atoms, we looked up. Long before we mapped the stars or dreamed of rockets, we wondered. The night sky has always been a mirror, not just of our universe, but of ourselves. It stares back with a riddle we've never been able to solve. Are we alone? Every civilization that's ever existed has gazed into the void and imagined what or who might be out there. Spirit, gods, travelers, shadows, brothers, monsters, reflections. Now, for the first time in our history, we have the tools to truly search. And what we've found is not comforting, because despite our new eyes, the telescopes that can see back to the dawn of time, and our new ears, radio receivers scanning 100 billion stars, the result has been the same: silence, a deep, perfect silence. And yet, the numbers say we shouldn't be alone. The math of possibility. Let's do the arithmetic of all. One galaxy, the Milky Way, contains over 100 billion stars. That's just one galaxy. There are at least 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. If even a tiny fraction of those stars have planets, and we now know most of them do, then the number of potentially habitable worlds is incomprehensible. It would be easier to count the atoms in your body than to count every planet that might cradle life. And here's the cosmic kicker. On Earth, life appeared almost immediately. As soon as our planet cooled, life took hold. Not complex life, just microbes. The building blocks, but it happened quickly. That suggests that life might not be rare. It might be inevitable. So why don't we see it? Why does the sky remain a silent sea, unbroken by any song? This is what the physicist Enrico Fermi famously asked in the 1952nd. The math says we're not alone. Reality says we've never been more alone. This contradiction is now called the Fermi Paradox, and it may be the most haunting riddle science has ever faced. A universe teeming with possibility, yet devoid of contact. So again, where is everyone? Imagination meets evidence. For centuries, we answered this question with imagination. Aliens were green, grey, gelatinous, insectoid. They arrived in flying saucers or glowing clouds. They abducted cows. They hid behind moons. They whispered into human minds. But imagination is no longer our only tool. Today, we have data. We have the Kepler Space Telescope, which revealed thousands of exoplanets, some rocky, some gas giants, some orbiting suns, not so different from ours. We have the James Webb Telescope, peering into alien atmospheres, looking for biosignatures, molecules that only life can produce. In 2023, Webb detected dimethyl sulfide, a molecule on Earth made only by life in the atmosphere of a planet called K2 to 18b. Is it proof? Number? Is it a cosmic breadcrumb? Absolutely. Suddenly, alien life is no longer fiction. It's an open investigation. The question has shifted. It's no longer, is there life out there? It's, why haven't we found it yet? And what will we do when we do? The echo is us, because this search isn't just about them, it's about us. To find alien life, truly find it, is to confront our deepest myths, fears, and aspirations. If we found bacteria on Europa, How would that change our definition of life? If we found intelligent life orbiting another star, how would that change our definition of humanity? And if they found us first, how would we respond? Would we welcome them with wonder or fear? Would we seek unity or division? Would we reach out or pull the trigger? The first contact is not just a moment of cosmic discovery. It is a test of character. We like to imagine alien civilizations as reflections of our best selves, wise, peaceful, ancient, but we should also prepare for the possibility that they are not, or worse, that they are everything we fear about ourselves. After all, when we finally look into the eyes of the other, what we might truly see is a mirror, the silence that speaks. Here's a darker thought. What if the silence is not an accident? What if it's a warning? What if the reason we don't hear others is because the moment a species learns to shout across the stars is also the moment it learns to destroy itself? Maybe the stars are quiet not because no one is out there, but because those who once shouted are now gone, extinguished by their own brilliance, silenced by their own technology, dead by their own design. Maybe, just maybe, the silence is the message. And the message is this: survival is not guaranteed. A moment in the cosmic storm. Right now, we stand at the threshold. We've lit the match. We've built the microphone. We are transmitting into the dark. But before we hear anything back, we have one final question to ask ourselves, a question that will define us long before anyone else can. What kind of species are we becoming? Because whether the aliens come tomorrow or never, this moment, this search is not about waiting for something to arrive. It's about who we are while we're listening. And maybe, just maybe, the silence before the voice is not empty at all. Maybe it's the breath before the answer. Maybe it's the universe giving us one last moment to decide who we want to be. We search the stars for something like us. But what if life out there is nothing like life at all? What if life doesn't breathe oxygen, or bask in sunlight, or swim through water? What if it doesn't even have cells, or DNA, or anything that fits into our biological vocabulary? What if it's not built of meat but of magnetism? Not carbon but crystal? Not mind but motion? Our assumptions are small. Earth is all we've ever known. But Earth is not the blueprint of the universe. It's just one experiment, one stanza in the cosmic poem, and the rest of the verse is still unwritten or unread. When we say we're searching for life, what we really mean is we're searching for ourselves. Something with two eyes, a mouth, maybe limbs. Something with curiosity, intelligence, empathy, or at the very least, metabolism. We imagine bacteria, forests, fish, civilizations. But what if life true? Alien life doesn't play by our rules. We carry a mirror into space. We hope to see a reflection. But what if the mirror shows us something we don't recognize? What if it's not a reflection, but a revelation? Maybe the biggest mistake in the search for life is believing we already know what it looks like. We call this bias carbon chauvinism, the idea that life must be like Earth life, because that's the only kind we've ever seen. But that's like walking through one forest on one island, and assuming every tree in the world must look the same. The truth is, we don't yet know how strange life can be. Traditionally, life is defined by a checklist. It must grow, reproduce, respond to stimuli, evolve, consume energy, maintain homeostasis. A tidy list. Neat, academic, comforting. But even on Earth, that list is messy. Viruses blur the line. Are they alive? They can reproduce, but only with a host. They mutate, they evolve, but they don't eat, they don't breathe. They're inert until awakened by another cell. Then there's the prion, a malformed protein that causes disease. It contains no genetic material. It doesn't replicate like life. And yet, it spreads, it destroys, it propagates itself by warping others. Is that not a kind of survival? Life, it seems, is not a binary. It is a gradient, a spectrum, a tide with no shoreline. So what if alien life isn't just weird biology? What if it's not biology at all? What if it's pattern, process, a dance of information in matter? Imagine a gas cloud swirling across light years, with density fluctuations that compute like neurons. Imagine a colony of magnetic storms on a neutron star, adapting to changes in stellar radiation, not with genes, but with magnetic resonance. Imagine a ring of particles orbiting a black hole, bouncing quantum information back and forth in a closed loop, creating thought, memory, identity, without ever being alive by Earth standards. Would we recognize it? Would we know how to ask the right questions? Or would we look at it and see nothing? Aliens might not walk or speak or build. They might be plasma fields, radio waves, living crystal networks humming beneath frozen moons. They might be dark matter patterns that encode memory, or space-time topologies that fold themselves into awareness. To find them, we must unshackle life from the body. We must imagine consciousness without skin. Even on Earth, nature is far weirder than most realize. There are creatures that photosynthesize like plants, others that survive being frozen for decades. There's a jellyfish that rewinds its life cycle, a biological time traveler. There are organisms that thrive in acid, others in boiling water or beneath kilometers of rock. The tardigrade, the water bear, can survive the vacuum of space. Literally. We've launched them into orbit, exposed them to cosmic radiation, and they shrugged it off. This is life as rebellion. Life that says, I will not die where you think I should. So if life is that adaptable here, imagine what it could become elsewhere. Here's a disturbing thought. What if alien life has already been detected and ignored? What if we've dismissed it because it didn't blink or twitch or send a radio wave? What if it exists in plain sight, but we never saw it because we were looking for chlorophyll and cell walls, not logic gates made of plasma or self-replicating magnetic fields? In 1977, a signal called the WOW signal hit our detectors, a 72-second radio burst so unusual it looked artificial. It never repeated. We don't know where it came from. It's never been heard again. We shrugged. We archived it. We moved on. But what if it was the hello and we weren't ready? The truth is, intelligence may not shout. It may whisper in frequencies we don't yet understand. So what does it mean to be alive? Maybe life isn't about chemistry, but self-maintaining complexity. Maybe it's anything that resists entropy long enough to grow, anything that adapts, anything that preserves its structure through time, even if that structure isn't flesh. Maybe a crystal that rearranges itself based on sunlight is alive. Maybe a cloud that dreams in magnetic pulses is conscious. Maybe the entire universe is learning how to wake up. What if the cosmos itself is alive? Not metaphorically, literally. What if stars are neurons, galaxies, brainwaves? What if the universe is not just a stage, but a participant? In the end, we may not find life the way we imagine. We may find something that forces us to redefine imagination itself. And in doing so, we may have to confront a deeper question. Are we alive the way we think we are? Or are we just one kind of dance in a much larger symphony? It begins not with trumpets, but with tremors not in the earth, but in us. A signal, barely a blip, a pulse that repeats too perfectly to be noise. It does not scream. It waits. And the moment we recognize it, reality fractures. We are no longer alone. It happens on a Tuesday, or maybe it's a Thursday, or a night so ordinary that no one remembers what they were doing before the news hit. First, it's whispers on obscure science forums, then trending hashtags, then breaking banners on global news. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, confirms an anomaly, a narrowband signal, repeating, structured, intelligent, undeniable. Humanity holds its breath, and in that suspended moment between knowing and understanding, the world transforms. Borders lose meaning, religions tremble, governments scramble, philosophers smile like they've been waiting forever. Every telescope on Earth is turned to the source. Every language is tested against the signal. Supercomputers run day and night, and then it hits us. This is not just a signal, this is a message. Suddenly, a question no one thought to ask becomes the most urgent question in human history. Who replies? Is it the United Nations? NASA? China? An AI trained on diplomacy and dream journals? Do we send a poem? A map? A strand of DNA? A warning? What do you say to someone who may be a billion years ahead of you? What do you say to someone who may be watching and judging? Nations argue. Scientists plead. Billionaires offer to beam a reply through their private satellites. And behind every debate, one truth looms. There is no second chance at a first impression. What we send might define how we're seen. It might determine whether we're welcomed, ignored, or eliminated. Because this is not just contact. This is exposure. We are naked before the stars. The message may be simple. A string of prime numbers, a mathematical constant, a visual representation of language. But its meaning is not in its content. Its meaning is in its existence. It means they know about us. They've watched us. And now, they want us to know they're watching. We are the subject of a gaze that spans light years. And the question that echoes louder than the signal itself is, what have they seen? They've seen our wars, our pollution, our greed, our beauty, our art, our questions. They've seen Hiroshima and the Hubble telescope. They've seen Auschwitz and Bach. They've seen TikToks and black holes. If they are wise, they will understand our contradictions. If they are not, they may fear us, or worse, pity us. Theologies crack under the weight of new cosmologies. Faiths that claimed we were the center must now explain why God made others. Some believers rejoice the visitors are angels, or demons, or gods. Others panic this is the end of prophecy, the fall of meaning. Meanwhile, the markets shatter, technologies are re-evaluated overnight. What good is our science if theirs is magic? Academia shifts, entire disciplines become obsolete. The history of human thought resets to year one. Children ask their parents, what happens now? And no parent knows what to say. Because the story we've told ourselves for thousands of years, the story of only us, is dead. And in its place stands a terrifying freedom. We are part of something bigger, but we don't know what that something wants. Fear blooms like wildfire. Fear of invasion. Fear of assimilation. Fear that we are being studied like ants in a jar. Fear that we're being judged. Populations riot. Cults form. Militaries mobilize. Governments censor. What if it's a trap? What if it's bait? What if the real message is buried in the carrier wave, waiting to trigger something? Even if the signal is peaceful, we react like animals backed into a corner because survival doesn't trust intention. Hope struggles to breathe through the smoke of paranoia, but some people quietly, humbly choose to listen. Eventually, the reply must be sent, and in the end, it is not the politicians or the priests who choose the words. It is the poets, the scientists, the children, and the message is this: we hear you. We are new to this. We are still learning how not to fear, but we want to know you. If you are listening, we are listening too. A simple message, but not weak, because it contains what no machine can simulate: humility. And in that humility is our strength. Because the truth is, the first contact is not about aliens. It is about us and who we choose to become when we are finally seen. After the message is sent, the wait begins. It could take years for a reply, or centuries. Or maybe the message is already here, arriving before we were ready to hear it. Maybe the aliens are silent because they remember their own first contact, and they know the madness it brings. Or maybe, just maybe, they are already among us, not in ships, not in secret bases, but in ideas, in dreams, in mathematics we don't understand, in concepts that visit us when we stare into the night and feel something staring back. First contact may not be an event, it may be a mirror, and what we see in that mirror is everything we've been too afraid to face. They called it the Great Silence, not because space was quiet, it never is. The cosmos hums with radiation, pulses with particles, screams with the death of stars. No, this silence was different. It wasn't the absence of noise. It was the absence of answers. For decades, we scanned the skies for signals, waited for patterns, watched for visitors. But all we found was the void staring back. The more we looked, the stranger it became. There were supposed to be civilizations out there, thousands, millions perhaps. The math demanded it. The Drake equation, built on probability and the sheer immensity of time and space, insisted that the galaxy should be teeming with intelligent life, with radio towers, megastructures, Dyson spheres, signals, and yet nothing. No messages, no megacities orbiting stars, no interstellar trade routes lighting up the void, not even ruins, just silence. This paradox has a name, the Fermi Paradox. If intelligent life is common in the universe, then where is everyone? For a while, we assumed we weren't listening hard enough, or in the right way. Maybe they were using quantum entanglement, or maybe they had already transcended physical form. Maybe they spoke in the dance of gravity waves, or lived inside black holes, or vibrated as thought alone. But over time, another possibility crept in, colder, darker, and far more terrifying. What if the silence isn't an accident? What if it's a tomb? Somewhere along the path from microbial slime to interstellar travelers, something goes wrong, and not just once, but every time. Civilizations bloom like mayflies in the cosmic stream, only to be extinguished before they can speak across the stars. Some call it the Great Filter. It is the silent guillotine that waits on the path to progress. It could be technological self-destruction, nuclear fire, AI gone rogue, bioweapons that spiral out of control. It could be climate collapse or resource exhaustion, or runaway nanotechnology. Or it could be something far worse, something external, a cosmic predator, a natural phenomenon we haven't yet discovered, a filter so total, so absolute, that nothing survives long enough to leave a mark. What if intelligence is the universe's most fatal mutation? A flame too unstable to sustain, a flash that burns itself out the moment it becomes aware. That would explain the silence, not absence, but aftermath. It would mean the galaxy isn't waiting for us to join the choir. It's echoing with the ghosts of voices that never made it past the first verse. And here we are, standing at the edge of that filter, staring into the abyss of possibility. Maybe we've already passed the filter. Maybe life itself, Earth's improbable cocktail of chemistry and chaos, is the rarest miracle in the galaxy. Maybe the silence means we are the survivors, the chosen, the lottery winners. Or maybe the filter lies ahead, and every breakthrough we celebrate: artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, quantum computing, brings us one step closer to it. There's a theory called the dark forest. Imagine the universe as a vast forest at night. Every civilization is a hunter, moving through the dark, listening, waiting. To shout into the silence is to reveal your position. And if others are out there unknown, unknowable, possibly hostile, then the safest strategy is silence. Because in a dark forest, those who speak die. In this version of the cosmos, the silence isn't mysterious. It's deliberate. It's a defense. And we, loud, reckless, primitive, have already made too much noise. If the great filter exists and lies ahead, then our future becomes a race against ourselves. A race to mature faster than we self-destruct. A race to understand before we are misunderstood. Because the moment we're seen, we are vulnerable. But maybe the filter isn't destruction. Maybe it's something more subtle. Maybe it's stagnation, civilizations that lose the will to explore. Species that turn inward, into virtual dreams, into illusions of paradise. Maybe the stars go quiet, not because they die, but because they forget how to care. Maybe silence is the natural end of comfort. Or maybe it's a mercy. Because what if the final truth of the universe is too much for any mind to bear? What if consciousness was never meant to peer this far into the dark? Still, here we are, awake, watching, listening, and the silence, whether a warning or a wound, calls to something primal in us. We are not content with being alone. We are not content with not knowing. We are driven by something deeper than survival: curiosity, wonder, the ache to connect, the unbearable beauty of the question itself. That may be our curse, but it is also our signal, because maybe that is what breaks the filter. Not power, not speed, not even intelligence, but humility, empathy, the willingness to risk connection despite the fear, to look into the dark and whisper not, "Who's there?" but "We are here." So maybe the great silence isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's the beginning, the waiting breath before the first true contact, the sacred pause between questions. And maybe the universe is listening too. We used to think evolution was a ladder, that we climbed from slime to fish, from ape to man, and that we now stood proudly at the top, the finished product. But evolution doesn't build ladders. It builds branches, wild, tangled, infinite branches, and we are just one of them. If aliens exist, truly exist, then somewhere, on some branch far from ours, intelligence took a different form, different body, different senses, different stories. And perhaps, long ago, they asked the same thing we're asking now. What do we become after we know we're not alone? Because that question changes everything. Not just our science or our maps, but us, our choices, our fears, our futures. For millennia, we have defined ourselves by contrast. We are not animals, we are not machines, we are not gods, we are human. We are the center of our own myth. But when we meet another intelligence, that center shatters. Suddenly, we are not the intelligence. We are an intelligence, one species, one way of thinking, one sliver of what consciousness might become across the stars. It's humbling and terrifying and necessary, because the moment we understand that we are not the pinnacle, we begin to evolve again, not physically, but emotionally, morally, spiritually. The first step is reflection. The second is transformation. Some will resist it. They'll cling to old ideas, old fears, old gods. They'll say, "We are special," and they'll mean it like a shield. But others, the dreamers, the artists, the wanderers, they will look up and feel something new blooming inside. Not just curiosity, not just wonder, responsibility. Because if we are to be seen by other minds, truly seen, then we must decide who we want to be when they see us. Do we want to be children with weapons, or stewards of our planet? Do we want to be conquerors of each other, or caretakers of life? This is not just a technological question. It's a question of maturity, because intelligence alone does not make a species wise. A civilization that sends rockets but kills for oil is not ready. A species that builds AI but lets its own children starve is not ready. A world that can map galaxies but ignores the suffering next door is not ready. Contact is not just about aliens, it is a mirror, and when it arrives, or even when we begin to truly believe it might, we will be forced to see ourselves as we are, not as nations, not as tribes, but as a species. A single note in a cosmic symphony we've only just begun to hear. And here's the paradox. In trying to prepare for them, we may finally become who we were meant to be. Because to meet the stars with open hands instead of clenched fists, we must shed the weight of our past. We must evolve not into something more, but something wiser. What might that look like? Imagine a future where empathy is considered a form of intelligence, where compassion is taught with the same rigor as math, where nations no longer compete to dominate the sky, but to care for the ground beneath them, where Earth is not a resource, but a sacred vessel. Imagine cities designed not to impress each other, but to protect each other. Technologies built not to replace us, but to remind us of what makes us irreplaceable. Imagine children growing up, not with fear of strangers, but with excitement for the unknown, not pledging allegiance to flags, but to the future. Imagine a civilization that doesn't just detect the signal, but deserves it. This is not a utopia, it's a direction, a path we can begin to walk. Because the moment we admit that other minds might exist, that they may watch us, judge us, learn from us, we become accountable not just to ourselves, but to the cosmos. And in that accountability is hope, because it means we can rise. It means we can choose to be better, not because we have to, but because we want to, because we know, now, that we are part of something larger, that our actions echo beyond borders, beyond time, maybe even beyond species. The great silence may still surround us, but in learning to speak as one, we become a signal of our own, a signal not made of radio waves or math puzzles, but of behavior, of kindness, of courage, of the willingness to grow beyond what evolution blindly gave us and step into what conscious evolution might make of us. Because evolution is not over, it's just beginning in our choices, And perhaps the greatest transformation of all is this, that we stop looking for aliens as strangers and start looking for them as future neighbors. And to welcome a neighbor, we must first clean our home. Maybe that's why they haven't spoken yet. Maybe they're waiting for us to grow up, waiting for the moment we stop asking what they will do when we make contact and start asking, what will we do with ourselves before they arrive? We've always asked the wrong question, not where are they, but what are they? Because if there's one great failure in our cosmic quest, it's this. We keep searching for ourselves out there. We look to the stars and expect carbon and water and DNA. We assume evolution obeys the same rules across the universe, that life must breathe, move, metabolize, reproduce, that it must have bodies and blood and some kind of eye to look back at us. But what if that's a cage? What if our concept of life is just a mirror one, so fogged by human assumptions that we can't see anything that doesn't resemble our own reflection? We define life by what it does, not by what it is. But the universe doesn't care for our definitions. It builds in chaos. It innovates in silence. It evolves in directions no earth-bound biologist would dare imagine. Consider this. There are organisms on Earth that challenge everything we thought we knew. Slime molds that can solve mazes without a brain. Fungi that communicate across forests. Tardigrades that survive the vacuum of space. Even viruses, unliving by our standards, show eerie complexity, coordination, and purpose. If life can already defy boundaries here, what might it do out there? What if aliens aren't creatures, but networks? Not singular minds in bodies, but vast planetary intelligences. Oceans that think, storm systems that feel, lattices of consciousness encoded in magnetic fields or quantum states. Sentience that isn't local but ambient. Could we recognize a mind that doesn't begin or end? Would we even know if we were looking at it? Or would we dismiss it as weather, radiation, background noise? The first alien we meet may not shake our hand. It may not even notice us. It may be a moon-sized brain, orbiting a gas giant, dreaming in neutrino patterns older than stars. It may be silent not because it can't speak, but because it doesn't speak the way we listen. This is the danger of anthropocentrism, the belief that we are the template, that life needs to eat, breathe, die, that intelligence must resemble ours. But the universe has had billions of years and trillions of tries to do better, smarter, stranger. We are not the blueprint. We are an accident that worked. And if aliens are truly alien, then contact may not be a conversation. It may be a decoding, a decryption of signals we didn't know were signals. What if life is not always warm and wet and soft? What if it is crystalline, geometric, incorporeal? What if it forms in the hearts of neutron stars, or rides solar winds, or emerges spontaneously in complex electromagnetic loops? What if it doesn't want to move but to oscillate? What if it doesn't care to build but only to experience? We assume intelligence creates tools, but what if it creates dreams instead? What if the most advanced minds are not explorers, but philosophers woven into the structure of dark matter itself, meditating across aeons, pulsing like thoughts in the skeleton of the cosmos? Would we call that life, or would we call it anomaly? This is the problem with our search. We build telescopes based on biology, not possibility. We filter signals through expectation. We narrow the scope of life until it looks like us, then wonder why we haven't found anyone. Maybe we already have. Maybe they were the signal we discarded as static. Maybe they were the shimmer in the atmosphere we chalked up to reflection. Maybe the UFOs in our skies are not ships, but scouts of a living technology. Not driven, but grown. Not artificial, but conscious. And we, in our arrogance, call them unidentified, as if our naming were the only thing that gives them meaning. What if aliens don't arrive, but awaken? What if they are already here, not hidden in bunkers, but encoded in the very laws of physics, not watching us, but waiting for us to evolve to the point where we can perceive them? Perhaps life is not a state, but a spectrum, and we noisy, bright, emotional creatures are somewhere in the middle, between dust and divinity, between chaos and coherence. And the aliens we seek, are simply those who've crossed a threshold we do not yet understand. So the real question is not, are we alone? It's, are we ready to meet life that does not want to be found, or does not even know it is being looked for? Because discovery may not feel like contact. It may feel like confusion, like madness, like encountering something so beyond comprehension that our brains fill in the gaps with myths, dreams, nightmares. No wonder history is filled with stories of angels, demons, spirits. Maybe we've met the aliens before and simply couldn't see them for what they were, not because they weren't real, but because we weren't ready. In the end, maybe the search for life beyond Earth is not just a scientific quest. Maybe it's a philosophical reckoning, a confrontation with our deepest assumptions about what it means to exist. And maybe the first contact will not be a message from another world, but the shattering realization that our world and our minds have never been the only story. We've always looked out, toward distant stars, toward the glittering arms of the galaxy, toward galaxies beyond galaxies, spiraling like sacred geometry in the night. But what if the answers aren't out there? What if they've been right here, all along, not in the starlight, but in the dark, in the cold, in the quiet, forgotten corners of our own solar system where life may already be hiding? Let's start with Europa, a frozen moon of Jupiter, locked in the gas giant's gravity like a glass eye orbiting a god. Its surface is a cracked and wounded shell of ice, scarred by time and tide. But beneath it, miles deep, there's an ocean, a vast, salty, sunless ocean, more water than all of Earth's seas combined, kept warm not by sunlight, but by the flexing gravitational pull of Jupiter, a hidden sea that churns in the dark. And where there is water, there may be life. We've seen what life can do on Earth. It thrives at the bottom of our oceans, near boiling vents where sunlight never reaches. It dances on volcanic rims. It survives in radiation, in acid, in ice. Life, it turns out, is not fragile. It is relentless. If Europa holds life, it will be alien in every sense of the word. It may not use sunlight or DNA. It may drift, blind and bioluminescent, through a black sea, communicating in pulses and echoes. It may be microbial, or it may be something far more evolved, something that has lived, undisturbed, for 1 billion years beneath our feet. And Europa is just one of many. Enceladus, Saturn's brilliant little moon, shoots plumes of vapor into space like geysers of secrets. We've flown through those plumes, tasted them with our machines, found organic compounds, found heat, found chemistry begging for complexity. Mars once had rivers, oceans, a magnetic field, an atmosphere. It may still hold life, entombed in polar ice or sleeping beneath the surface, ancient microbes, fossilized bacteria, or something dormant, waiting for the warmth of our arrival. Even Venus, hellish, scorched, poisonous once, may have been habitable, and in its upper clouds today, strange chemical anomalies tease us with the possibility of unknown metabolisms. Could floating microbial life dance in the acidic mist? The solar system, once thought to be barren and dead, is starting to whisper, and those whispers are growing louder. We thought Earth was the oasis. Now we see it's part of an archipelago, and the other islands may not be empty. But if life is here, just a few astronomical steps away, why haven't we found it? Why haven't we drilled into Europa? Why haven't we dug deep into the Martian crust or built sky-sailing ships for Venus? The answer is painfully human. Cost, politics, fear of contamination both ways. If we find life and touch it before we're ready, we may destroy it, or it may destroy us. Not through malice, but biology. Imagine encountering a molecule that reprograms us at the cellular level. Not evil, just different. Viruses don't hate, they replicate. And evolution doesn't forgive. But here's the truth. We are running out of time to wonder, because within the next few decades, we will go back. We will land, drill, scoop, fly. Robotic explorers will crack the ice. Human footprints will press into Martian soil. We will taste the air, map the oceans, scrape the walls of ancient caverns, and one day, maybe not long from now, a signal will come, not from a telescope aimed at Alpha Centauri, but from a rover beneath the surface of a moon we once dismissed as dead. It might be a spectral reading, a chemical anomaly, a twitching cell, a flicker of motion caught by a camera, just once before it goes still. And in that moment, the moment we confirm we are not alone, the entire story of our species will break open, because it means biology is not a miracle, it is a pattern. It means that life is not rare, but inevitable, that the universe does not just allow for it, it wants it. It builds it wherever it can, in every niche, every shadow, every crack where energy and complexity can dance. Life as emergent property, life as cosmic instinct. But there's a darker possibility too. What if we are the first? What if these oceans and soils and clouds are sterile? What if we reach out, over and over, and find only silence? Then we will have to face a responsibility far greater than discovery. We will become life's only voice, the only branch that bloomed, the only melody in the dark. And with that comes not triumph, but weight, a duty to preserve, to expand, to carry the torch forward, to not waste the miracle we were given. Because if the universe is empty, then we are not explorers, we are seeds, and Earth is not a cradle but a launch pad. Every probe, every mission, every rover, not curiosity alone, but continuation, the spreading of the spark, the seeding of the stars. Because if there's no one else to do it, then it must be us. Still, part of me believes we will find something. Not gods, not monsters, but life, strange, small, silent, waiting. And when we do, we must approach not with conquest in our hearts, but reverence, as pilgrims, as guests. Because the moment we encounter life beyond Earth, we must recognize something profound. We are not the beginning, we are not the center, we are part of a greater story, a living universe, and its next chapter is just beneath the ice. We always imagined them with tentacles, or eyes like obsidian, cold and bottomless. We pictured the grotesque, the monstrous forms twisted by alien physics and chemistry. But what if the most unsettling truth isn't how different they are, but how similar? We are now discovering planets by the thousands. Every few weeks, a new world is added to the catalogue, a fresh possibility orbiting a distant sun. Some are massive, scorched, bloated like failed stars. Others are icy, lonely, locked in eternal twilight. But some sit in the quiet zone, the Goldilocks region. Not too hot, not too cold, just right for liquid water and maybe life. Thanks to telescopes like Kepler and TESS, we've become cosmic cartographers. We map dim starlight, detect shadows as planets pass, and read the faintest whispers in the light tiny spectral signatures that hint at atmospheric composition. Oxygen, methane, carbon dioxide, water vapor. These aren't just gases, they're signs, clues that a planet might be breathing, signs that something or someone is changing that atmosphere. And yet, as we gather more data, a strange pattern emerges. Some of these exoplanets don't just seem habitable, they seem engineered. Their orbits stable in unlikely ways. Their compositions unusually balanced. Their spectra familiar, do familiar. What if we're not just looking at alien worlds? What if we're looking at alien mirrors? Let's follow the logic. If the laws of physics are universal, and evolution is shaped by environment and constraint, then perhaps intelligence doesn't have infinite forms. Perhaps it converges. Perhaps minds, wherever they evolve, face the same problems and stumble upon the same solutions. Symmetry, eyes to see, hands to grasp, bipedalism for balance. Maybe the humanoid form is not an earthly accident, but a cosmic archetype. This idea, once dismissed as science fiction, now demands serious thought. It's called convergent evolution, the phenomenon where different life forms evolve similar traits because of similar pressures. Wings in birds and bats, eyes in octopi and humans, echolocation in dolphins and whales. Now imagine that on a galactic scale, across light years, separated by distance, time, and origin, could other species, forged in different cradles, still end up looking like us? Maybe not exactly. Not carbon for carbon, cell for cell, but close enough that if we ever met them face to face, we'd see something disturbingly human in their gaze. And maybe that's what truly frightens us. Because if aliens look like us, then we can no longer pretend we're special. It means we're not a divine mold, but a biological pattern. It means intelligence is not a gift, but an algorithm, and we are just one instance, not the first, not the last, just one echo in a long string of minds. But what if we go even further? What if we are the aliens? Not in the poetic sense, but literally. There's a theory fringe, yes, but increasingly whispered in serious circles that life on Earth didn't originate here, that it came aboard comets or meteors, that panspermia seeded the oceans, that we are, at our molecular roots, immigrants. Even the late Stephen Hawking warned that intelligent life could be a self-replicating infection across the stars, that we, or something like us, might have been here before, might return again, might already be spread. What if human life is not the destination, but the vessel? What if consciousness, in some form, travels, not just biologically, but digitally, energetically, quantumly? What if civilizations, once they reach a certain threshold, stop sending rockets and start sending themselves? Encoded across photons, embedded in electromagnetic waves, riding signals like ghosts inside the static. We're already building the technology to preserve minds, uploading memory, simulating behavior, digitizing the self. Now imagine a civilization 10,000 years ahead of us. Would they need bodies? Or would they be signals crossing space in search of hosts? And what if Earth was one? What if the spark that ignited our ancestors came not from mud and lightning, but from something far older, not divine, not accidental, but intentional, not a creator, but a transmitter? It's an uncomfortable thought, one that reframes everything: religion, history, biology, consciousness. But here's the poetic twist. Even if we are alien in origin, even if we were seeded, programmed, or sculpted, we are still human now. We dream, we suffer, we ask questions no machine would bother asking. And perhaps that is the true sign of intelligence. Not technology, but wonder, the ache for more, the courage to look at the stars and say, I want to know you. And if that same wonder burns in other minds across the void, then maybe, just maybe, they are looking back. And when we meet, if we ever do, the shock will not be in the contact, but in the recognition. They will not be monsters. They will not be gods. They will be something stranger, familiar, and we will see in them the possibility of what we might become, or what we once were. It was supposed to be simple. Once we realized the stars were suns, and that many of those suns had planets, the rest seemed inevitable. Life, intelligence, civilizations, voices in the void. And yet, we've been listening for over half a century. We've built radio arrays that can detect the whisper of a spacecraft on Mars, the flicker of a dying star across the galaxy. We've scanned thousands of frequencies, sent signals, waited, but the sky remains quiet. No message, no beacon, no sign that anyone or anything is out there. Just silence. It's a silence so complete, so total, that it's become its own kind of signal. A paradox louder than sound, a cosmic contradiction. It's called the Fermi Paradox, and it cuts deep. Enrico Fermi, physicist and father of the atomic age, once asked a question over lunch that still haunts science today. Where is everybody? The logic was airtight. There are billions of stars in the Milky Way alone. Many are older than our Sunday. Many have Earth-like planets. Some of those planets must have developed life. Some of that life must have evolved intelligence. Some of those intelligent civilizations should have developed interstellar travel. Even at modest speeds, the galaxy could be colonized in a few million years. So again, where is everybody? Why don't we see ships in our skies? Why don't we hear music in the static? Why is the night sky so empty? To answer that, we need to step back and stare into the numbers. The Drake equation was our first attempt to quantify the odds. A simple-looking formula, yet almost every variable within it is uncertain. It asks, how many communicating civilizations should there be in our galaxy right now? The answer, depending on your assumptions, anywhere from 10,000 to less than 1. Let that sink in. We could be surrounded by a galactic chorus, or we could be alone in the dark. Some say the silence means we're rare. Others say it means we're doomed. Let's explore both. Scenario uno. We are rare. This is the optimistic nightmare. Maybe life itself is astronomically improbable. Maybe Earth is an anomaly, a perfect storm of conditions, chemicals, and cosmic luck. Maybe the spark that lit our oceans is so unlikely. It has only happened here, once, in 13.8 billion years. Or maybe intelligence is the bottleneck. Maybe most life doesn't need to build, speak, or wonder. Maybe it's content as bacteria, coral, slime. Maybe the evolutionary path to self-awareness is a razor's edge, and we are the only ones who crossed it. If that's true, then we are the universe's great exception. Not because we are chosen, but because we got lucky. And luck, like all gifts, comes with a burden. We would not be explorers. We would be the caretakers of consciousness, the only witnesses, the only storytellers, the only ones capable of asking what it all means. And if we're the only ones who can, maybe we're the only ones who must. But there's another possibility, one more terrifying. Scenario dos. We are not alone, but we are next. Maybe the silence is not a sign of absence, but of extermination. Maybe the reason we don't hear civilizations is because they don't last. They burn out. They collapse. They destroy themselves. Nuclear fire, climate implosion, artificial intelligence, biological contagion, silicon apathy. Maybe intelligence is a self-extinguishing spark. Maybe the very thing that allows us to reach for the stars is also what burns us down. This is known as the Great Filter, the idea that somewhere along the path from stardust to spacefaring species, there is a wall most cannot cross. And the terrifying question is, have we already passed it? Or is it still ahead of us? If we've passed it, if the hardest step was behind us, then maybe we are safe. Maybe we are the survivors. But if it lies ahead, then silence becomes something else. A cemetery. The sky becomes not empty, but censored. Not quiet, but hushed. As if something, somewhere, is making sure civilizations don't make noise for too long. This gives rise to another theory, the dark forest hypothesis. Imagine the galaxy as a dark forest. Every civilization is a silent hunter, hiding behind the trees. Every noise, every signal, every broadcast, every flare of technology is a risk. Because out there, among the trees, are others, and not all of them are friendly. So civilizations go quiet, not because they are gone, but because they are afraid. They listen, they watch, they wait, and the first one to shout, peace. It's a chilling metaphor, and it suggests that we, in our eagerness to connect, may have already made a fatal mistake. We've sent signals, we've announced our presence, we've shouted into the void, and if anyone or anything is listening, they now know we are here. But maybe silence has another meaning. Maybe it is not fear, or failure, or extinction. Maybe it is timing. We've only been listening for decades. Compared to cosmic timescales, that's less than a blink. Maybe the signals are out there, but we haven't waited long enough. Or maybe the signals already came, but we weren't ready. We didn't have the tools, the language, the awareness. Maybe the message passed by, like wind through a cave, unheard, uncomprehended, gone. We are a young species, and youth is impatient. We expect answers on our timescale, but the universe speaks in centuries, in epochs, in orbits and decay rates and gravitational dances that last billions of years. We want a conversation, but maybe we're just one voice, shouting into a canyon, waiting for the echo, and maybe, just maybe, it's already coming. Slower than light, older than memory, louder than we can imagine. And when it finally reaches us, we will realize we were never alone, only early. What if the universe isn't silent? What if it's quiet on purpose? We've searched the skies for a voice, a flare, a sign, and found nothing. But what if that silence isn't emptiness? What if it's a warning? Imagine the galaxy as a vast library. Every star, a book, every planet, a page, and buried deep within civilizations, stories, wisdom. Now, imagine that someone or something has locked most of the doors. We can see the shelves, we can feel the knowledge, but we can't read it. We're not allowed to. Not yet. This is the essence of the planetary quarantine hypothesis, a chilling idea that answers the Fermi Paradox, not with absence, but with isolation. We're not alone. We're just not invited. Not until we're ready. To some, that sounds hopeful, like a cosmic parent keeping the matches out of a child's hands. But the more you explore it, the darker it gets. Because who decides what ready means? Who built the locks? And what are they afraid we'll do if we get out? Maybe they're not afraid of us. Maybe they're protecting us from what's out there. Something ancient, something patient, something that doesn't broadcast. It devours. Others call it the zoo hypothesis. The idea that Earth is a kind of protected exhibit, a cosmic preserve. Aliens might be observing us like we observe animals studying us, watching us evolve, learning from our mistakes. No contact, no interference, no disruption of the ecosystem. We are the experiment, the story unfolding. And the watchers, they never blink. If true, this would mean the great silence isn't silence at all. It's surveillance. And the sky isn't empty. It's crowded, filled with eyes we cannot see. This leads to an even stranger possibility. Maybe we have been contacted. Maybe we're just too primitive to recognize it. Imagine sending calculus to a chimpanzee or poetry to a fish. Would they understand? Or would they ignore it because they don't know what they're seeing? Maybe alien messages don't come in language. Maybe they come in structure, in geometry, in mathematics woven into the background radiation of the universe. Maybe the message is the universe, the laws we call physics, the constants we take for granted. Maybe they're not accidental. Maybe they're engineered. Carl Sagan once said, "If you want to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe." But what if someone did? What if reality itself is encoded? A kind of cosmic Rosetta Stone waiting to be cracked? If that's the case, then the first true contact won't come through radio waves. It will come through understanding. It will come the moment we realize that the fabric of space-time, the speed of light, the Planck constant, the structure of atoms, is not just the backdrop for life. It is the message to life. And we've only just begun to read it. But there's another path, one less hopeful. What if aliens aren't gods? What if they're not scientists or observers or silent mentors? What if they're just better predators? What if, in the grand food chain of intelligence, we are prey? The fear isn't irrational. Here on Earth, every time a more advanced civilization encountered a less advanced one, it ended in domination, genocide, enslavement, erasure. Now imagine that pattern scaled across galaxies. This is the dark forest again, but colder. Not everyone stays quiet because they're afraid of being eaten. Some stay quiet because they're doing the hunting, and the moment they hear a new signal, a naive voice shouting into the dark, they pounce. Maybe this is why the sky is silent, because every civilization that spoke too loudly is gone. What if this is the filter? Not war, not plague, not AI, but discovery. What if the moment you become advanced enough to scream into the cosmos is the moment you sign your death sentence? There's a reason lions don't roar when they hunt. There's a reason submarines run silent. And maybe the wisest civilizations in the galaxy are the ones that stop talking. Which brings us to us. We've been sending signals for decades. We've launched probes, radio waves, messages in bottles. We've attached maps, coordinates, even human DNA. We didn't just tell the galaxy we exist. We told them where we are. We told them who we are. And now, we wait. Is that bravery? Or arrogance? Are we explorers? Or are we children playing with fire building antennas not to listen but to summon? And if they come, if the sky suddenly cracks open and a ship appears, will we still want to know the answer? Will we regret asking? Or will we see ourselves truly for the first time? A small blue world, a fragile species, full of dreams and rage and wonder. Maybe that's why they haven't contacted us. Maybe they're waiting, not for us to build faster ships, but for us to become better souls. Maybe the signal they're listening for is not electromagnetic. Maybe it's ethical. And until we learn to speak in peace, they will keep their distance, not because they fear us, but because they still have hope. We used to think the sky was sacred, that stars were gods, that comets were omens, that the heavens were too high, too perfect to touch. Then came science, and with it telescopes, rockets, satellites. We broke gravity's leash. We reached orbit. We walked on the moon. We stared into galaxies 13 billion years away, and yet, in our age of reason, a strange unease has returned. The myths are not gone, they've evolved. Now they wear uniforms, fly without wings, appear on radar, disappear on film. We call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. It's the government's way of saying, we don't know what that was. But the truth is stranger, because they do know, and they're not telling us. For decades, these sightings were dismissed, pilots were ridiculed, footage was buried, eyewitnesses silenced. It was all just weather balloons, glare, imagination, until suddenly, it wasn't. In 2020, the US Navy confirmed something unthinkable. Yes, these objects exist. Yes, we've seen them. And no, we don't know what they are. The Pentagon released 3 videos. Grainy, unsettling, but real. Objects flying faster than anything we've ever built. Executing turns that would crush any pilot. Accelerating without wings, without exhaust, without explanation. Even seasoned pilots were shaken. They're not from here, one said. They defy physics, said another. They outmaneuvered us like we were standing still. And this time, the government didn't laugh. It listened, and then it went silent again. Why? Why would governments admit part of the truth, but not all? Because maybe they're not in control, maybe they're afraid. Or worse, maybe they've known for a long time and can't protect us. This isn't just conspiracy theory, it's official. In 2023, whistleblower David Grush, a former US intelligence officer, testified under oath that the US has retrieved non-human craft, not just debris, craft, some intact, some not, and inside, biologics, not human. Let that sink in. This isn't a movie. This isn't a rumor. It's sworn testimony, on record, to Congress, and still most of the world didn't blink. Why? Because after decades of denial, ridicule, and cinematic fiction, the truth has become invisible, hidden in plain sight. Disclosure is no longer a bang. It's a whisper, a slow drip of reality through a cracked dam. So the question is no longer, are we alone? It's, why haven't they told us? Is it fear? Must panic? Or is it something deeper? Maybe the answer would change everything, not just science, but religion, economics, politics, power, the very story of humanity. Because if we're not alone, then we are not the center, not of the universe, not of intelligence, not even of Earth's skies. And the systems built on that illusion, control, dominance, certainty, begin to crumble. So the truth is hidden behind classified programs, unacknowledged budgets, special access clearances, a cosmic cover-up so vast, it spawned decade. Presidents come and go, generals retire, but the machinery stays, a silence thicker than space, but it's leaking now, bit by bit, radar logs, pilot accounts, the classified memos. We are connecting the dots, and what emerges is not just the image of aliens, but of gatekeepers, people who know, and people who decide what the rest of us are allowed to know. It's not just about craft, it's about consciousness. Some whistleblowers speak of non-local intelligence entities, not bound by time, not limited by form. Some describe craft that react to thought, that respond not with propulsion, but with intention. Physics becomes poetry, technology becomes a mirror, and the alien becomes a reflection of something within us, or far beyond us. Are we dealing with visitors, or initiators, explorers, or wardens, or something else entirely, something we have no words for? There are documents, some say, that go further, hints of interdimensional craft, entities that operate in phases, not places, contact through altered states, machines that appear and vanish not through speed, but through perception, and always, the missing time, the moment in every abduction story when the clock breaks, the memories blur, the room bends, as if time itself is just another hallway they walk through, and we are still crawling in the dark. But maybe they're not hiding from us. Maybe they're teaching us, slowly, subtly, symbolically, through riddles, dreams, through the skies, through math, through myth, preparing us for something we cannot yet hold, because we are not yet ready to remember. And maybe we've met them before, in ancient carvings, in stories of sky gods and wheels of fire, in burning bushes and angels of light. Maybe what we now call aliens, we once called gods. Maybe the line was never real, only our words changed. And as we reach further into the void, as we build faster machines and sharper instruments, we are not just seeking others, we are approaching a mirror, one that reflects the deepest question we can ask. Not, who are they, but what are we? Because if contact comes not as invasion, but as invitation, then everything shifts. The past, the future, the soul, we become not the rulers of Earth, but citizens of a greater story, and the stars stop being decorations. They become neighbors, waiting, watching, and finally, when we're ready, welcoming us home. What happens if they answer? Not in theory, not in a thought experiment, but in reality. One clear, undeniable signal. One shimmering object in the sky, closer than ever before. One moment that shatters the illusion of solitude. What happens then? Does time stop? Do borders collapse? Do we fall to our knees in awe, in terror, in reverence? Or do we simply look up and see ourselves for the very first time? Because when they answer truly, we are no longer just human. We are part of something bigger, older, vaster than language. In that moment, the myth of separation dies, and all the stories we told ourselves about gods, about aliens, about destiny collapse into a single burning truth. We were never alone. We were just not ready to listen. But now the silence breaks, and the universe speaks. Maybe it's not a voice. Maybe it's not a ship. Maybe it's a feeling, a wave, a frequency that rearranges the molecules of your identity. A knowing that doesn't come from books, but from being. Like seeing color for the first time. Like remembering something ancient, something yours, but long forgotten. Some say first contact will be physical. Others say it will be mental. Some say it will be spiritual. And maybe they're all right. Because maybe contact is not one moment but a threshold. And we are crossing it now. The signs are already here. In the skies. In the minds of visionaries. In the mathematics that grows too elegant to be random. In the synchronicities that feel like whispers through time. There are those who say contact will destroy religion. But maybe it will fulfill it. Not by replacing faith, but by transforming it. By revealing that the divine was never confined to temples or texts, but written into the structure of reality itself. Maybe the light that guided prophets is the same light that guides ships between the stars. Maybe the voice in the burning bush is the same voice buried in quantum entanglement. Maybe the heavens we prayed to were always listening. And maybe, just maybe, they've been waiting for us to stop shouting and start awakening. But awakening comes with cost. Because first contact isn't just discovery, it's disillusionment. We may find we are not the smartest, the fastest, the strongest. We may find that we are fragile and late to the party, that we are toddlers in a cathedral of titans, and yet that may be the very thing that saves us. Because in humility, there is growth. In the collapse of ego, there is evolution. And in the face of the unknown, we remember what it means to wonder, not to conquer, not to control, but to belong. And this is the ultimate transformation, not them landing here, but us arriving there not physically, but consciously, crossing not a distance, but a dimension, moving from fear to curiosity, from dominance to dialogue, from isolation to integration, because the greatest journey is not through space, but through understanding, to see the other and know it as part of yourself. This is the true message in the silence. This is the answer encoded in the void. And it leads to one final staggering idea. Maybe we are the aliens. Maybe we are the ones meant to spread intelligence, to seed compassion, to carry the story forward, not as conquerors, but as witnesses. Maybe Earth is the chrysalis, and humanity is still unfolding. And contact, true contact, is not something that happens to us. It's something we must become, a state of resonance, a harmony of mind, heart, and cosmos. And when we reach that state as individuals, as a species, the sky will open, not with war, not with fire, but with a truth so beautiful, so overwhelming, it will feel like coming home, because the stars are not strangers. They are memory, and when they speak, they will not just say, "We are here." They will say, "You are ready."